Have you ever quit something that was actually good for you, all because of ego, frustration, or trying to save some money, only to look back and wish you had kept going? I have. And today I want to share a lesson I learned from my 30-day yoga challenge about discipline, ego, and even how I view weight gain, and how all of this is connected to saying yes. Today we're saying yes to a powerful lesson and the willingness to receive the lessons as they come. So here's the backstory. I got a membership at a local studio for unlimited classes for 1 month. So I gave myself a 30-day yoga challenge. I'm going to show up every day. Granted, it was right around Christmas, so they weren't open on Christmas. So it wasn't exactly 30 consecutive days, but I think it actually was 30 days in total. And honestly, I showed up every day. I pushed through the hard moments, like when I was realizing how sore I was, how out of shape I was, and I kind of gave myself permission to choose like a yin yoga class that day or choose a power yoga class that day. I really did it in a way that was empowering for my own choice, but also still committed to my goal of the 30 days of yoga. And by the end, I did feel stronger. I felt more grounded and I felt proud of myself. I even told one of the yoga teachers that I was really proud of the fact that I could feel greater flexibility within my body, even after only just a few weeks. I have a lot of chronic physical pain, and so this was actually really moving for me to be able to see that there could be more ease in my body, especially when I showed up to do this practice. But one thing that was also happening at the time at the studio was this thing called the Chakrathon. And it was this challenge to show up for 7 consecutive days of yoga, and you would be entered in to win 1 month free. I was like, this is great because I'm already showing up. I already had my own personal challenge for 30 days, and you're only asking for 7. I can definitely do that. But I actually was getting kind of attached to the idea of winning that challenge because I knew I was going into traveling and I wanted to save the money if I was going to do like another month before I went, because there actually was just one more month after that initial 30 days that I committed to myself and paid for. I had one more month before I was going to be leaving on this epic trip. And so I was like, this is perfect. I could just win this thing, then I could just keep going and it would be like really awesome. However, when the challenge ended, I didn't win the free month, which was a little surprising because I think there were only like 4 people that made the challenge happen. I was like, the chances are so great, but it didn't happen. I saw the email. I kept asking people like, when are we going to find out? Is it me? And then the email finally came out, and it was somebody else. I was so disappointed. I was like, I did it for more than 7 days. How could I not have won this? But I didn't. And so when the time came where my monthly membership that I had paid for, my unlimited classes ran out, I just stopped going. I was telling myself in the back of my head, I was like, just trying to save some money. This will be fine. I'll do it at home. And honestly, like the reason why I actually was able to make that much progress was because I was showing up to a class. I could have been doing this at home the whole time for the past year or years, but I haven't. And so that was more of my habit that took back over once I took out the structure of actually showing up to a class. Like being around people, being in a space where like this is what we're doing, and for me it invites me to push myself more, because when I'm at home I can just feel the burden and be like, I'll just stop right now. But when you're in class, there's just something about it that helps me really stay in the moment and stay with the practice for the whole time. And at first I was disappointed, but I didn't think too much of it. I was like, all right, I got to focus on other things. I have travel to be planning for. But after a week, I was really noticing that I had lost some of the progress I made. My body felt different. I felt less strong, less energized. And it hit me that I had thrown away all that momentum I had worked so hard for. Looking back, I realized that part of the reason I stopped wasn't just about saving money, it was my ego. I felt disappointed that I didn't get the free month, the reward I thought I kind of deserved. And I know it sounds silly, but we make that stuff up in our minds, right? You're like, I challenged myself 3 times as much as you even asked for. Like, shouldn't that mean something? It could have been totally randomized, and I just didn't get the thing. And it wasn't personal. And I feel like our ego can sometimes make it things personal that just aren't. You know, it wasn't the luck of, I didn't hit the luck of the draw, or whatever the phrase is. And that disappointment made it easy to quit. But here's the thing I eventually realized. The real reward wasn't the free month. The real reward was the strength, the energy, and the discipline I had built over those 30 days. And I gave it up because I got caught up in what I didn't win instead of focusing on what I had gained. Another lesson I learned too was about how I view weight gain. Now, I have a long relationship with weight and my body. I was very overweight for most of my childhood, all the way into my mid-20s. And when I say that, I mean that literally I was twice the size I am now. So when I noticed more recently that I had been gaining some weight, I think sometimes it triggers that part of me that had that long history of being overweight and all the things I felt about that. However, I actually do have a much better relationship with my body now, and that didn't happen right after I lost weight. That took 10 years before I really had a much more compassionate, loving relationship with my body after I lost weight. Maybe some of you know that journey, that it's so much in our head about how we see things and less about like the thing actually changing quite often. Like our brains have to catch up, our nervous systems have to catch up to big changes like that. But I did notice that in this time of not doing as much exercise, that I was becoming aware that I had gained weight. I don't think it was just over that week. Like, I do think that it has been a while that I had gained weight, but I'm a millennial and I wear a lot of yoga pants, a lot of black stretchy pants all the time, and I guess hadn't noticed. Beautiful thing of not wearing jeans. But when I began to notice, because I started looking at getting a couple of clothing items for this trip, because I wear my clothes into the ground. There are holes in things, and shoes get holes in them. And so I realized I just literally shouldn't wear them anymore. And I was like, I'm not going to Europe with clothes that are beat up so much. Like, I would like to get some new clothes, even if I'm getting it from secondhand. And so I was in like the worst place in the world, which is a fitting room in a clothing place, because they always have the worst lighting, and I don't know what it is about that. For some reason, it's just never fun. And I was trying things on, and I was just realizing, I was like, oh, I think I've gained weight. Like, I'm no longer this size. I think I'm at this size. And the sort of like internal tension came up around that. And I sat with, and I said yes to bearing witness to the frustration, which means the internalized messages I have about my body, what it needs to look like, and how it needs to be in the world for it to be valuable. I was saying yes to becoming aware of that. That is not a comfortable thing to become aware of when it gets triggered in a way, in a situation like that, where it's like not triggered in like, oh, I feel so proud of this, but you're like, oh, I feel frustrated about this. So another thing too, though, because I did end up going to yoga, it's not as frequently, but I'm going back to the studio and getting over my ego, frustration, and disappointment. I had actually gained a few free classes because you got these like points every time you show up, and I had at least 2 free classes because I had like almost 3,000 points for showing up for 30 days. And so I've been going back, and I'm sure I'll go back a number of times before I leave. But one of the things that actually happened in the yoga class today was I suddenly stopped the little messages that had been triggered about my body and how it has changed, and I was feeling disappointed about that as well. My perspective just shifted, where I suddenly realized that when looked at in a neutral way, it's just my body giving me a message, just saying something to me, or it's showing me something, right? And to me, it was kind of this message of like, hey, my body likes to move. When I don't move, I can gain weight. The pain can come back. I don't feel good, and it affects my emotions and my mental health and all the things. And so it was a sense of just my body kind of reaffirming that movement is something it really likes. And it was so beautiful to receive that message outside of judgment, divorced from the judgment that had been triggered for a time, and just letting it be more of a beautiful, loving message from my body to me. And what was nice about that is that it released the urgency. I think I felt this really strong urgency that once I noticed I'd gained weight, oh no, I need to fix it, quote unquote. Like it's such a terrible thing. So no fat phobia on this channel. And I am unlearning the fat phobia that I learned because I was fat for a long time. But when I was able to drop into my body, become aware, and get more curious, say yes to even if there was a lesson or wisdom that my body was showing me without the judgment. And I was able to receive that. And then I've been outside going for hikes more from a place of my body wants to move, not because I gotta change this thing that I've decided is wrong. And even recently when I was doing that, as I was hiking, I would normally take the whole loop all the way around. And I noticed that this time I went out for a ways and then I could feel with myself when I was done. And I just turned around and I went back and I felt such a relief in my body. Like my nervous system was even like saying to me, like, thank you for not pushing me farther than I wanted to go today. And so there's just so many beautiful things that have happened from that place of getting curious and moving past the judgment to listening to my body and the wisdom. Yeah, I just feel that in my heart. So saying yes to lessons, at least for me recently, was about learning what happens when my ego gets in the way and a disappointment drove a decision instead of me really choosing for what was most empowering for me. But I'm actually really glad I had that lesson. Like when I say yes to it and I receive it, it becomes such a powerful, beautiful thing rather than like the fact that we're always growing and learning, that even though it wasn't comfortable, I was able to see the whole dynamic of how emotions and decision making played together so that perhaps in the future, if I have a similar experience or I have something that's really disappointing, that maybe I could get just a tiny bit more present and a tiny bit more like, hey, I can validate the fact that this is disappointing. That is okay. We're allowed to have emotions as human beings. And no matter what they are, even if they feel like, oh, I'm an adult, I shouldn't feel disappointed, I didn't want to think. It's like, no, you can be disappointed if you don't want to think. Because you saw how much it would have helped you at that time. And being able to get curious, get present, say yes to it, and then ask myself, how do I want to make this decision, going forward? So I really love all of this. And I really love that saying yes is a big part of loving it. That this helps me with my relationship to situations like this where a lesson happens. Maybe you've been in a similar spot, quitting too soon, or getting stuck in your ego, or beating yourself up over a setback. So my challenge to you is to say yes to the lesson. Yes to those moments of being uncomfortable. Yes to the power of getting curious. Yes to receiving wisdom, even if it hurts. And if this video resonated with you, maybe let me know in the comments. Is there something that you've moved through recently that you want to share and be celebrated for? Is it something you're currently moving through? Did this help you to see a situation a little bit differently? I would love to know. I'd love to celebrate with you as you say yes to your whole self, to your whole messy self in this complex world where we're all making it through as systems crumble. I also want to mention that I was watching another creator talk about the concept of tragic optimism as an alternative to like nihilism. And I'll put a link in the description box somewhere if you want to go watch it. I thought it was very powerful. But something about that resonates with this living Yesfully movement, this journey that I'm on, because there's an element of acknowledging the reality of the world we live in and the systems we have to navigate. And then in the midst of that, choosing a level of like acceptance, empowerment, how I'm going to show up and respond, and how I'm going to create something better as much as I can, to the best of my ability. And also like how we do that together as a community, that we don't have to do this all by ourselves. So thank you for joining me as this community of Living Yesfully builds. I hope that we help each other be empowered to choose what we can and to build a better world. So I'll see you soon.